My adoptive parents called me ungrateful and threw me out, so I told their son the truth. And saw them face the consequences they deserved. My adoptive parents disowned me at 17 after I refused to give them my baby, only to find out they were finally expecting their own biological child. When I was 4 years old, I lost my parents to a tragic car accident. I don't remember much about the accident except that at one moment I was in the backseat, and the next time I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital. Being a child, it was so scary for me to wake up to nurses and doctors walking around me. I remember a CPS worker sitting by my bedside, explaining to me that my parents had passed away and that I would need to go stay with another family for a while. It was all confusing and overwhelming. After that, I went through a lot of changes. I stayed with different families in foster care, none of whom felt quite like home. Then, at the age of 5, I was finally introduced to Lorraine and James, who had been longing for a child of their own. From the moment I met them, I could sense their warmth and genuine care. They embraced me as their own without hesitation, filling the void in my heart that had been longing for love and belonging. I thought, after all the tragedy I had suffered through, I had finally found a second family of my own. From the moment I was adopted and had to move in with them, I did notice that James was extremely strict and disciplined, and Lorraine always seemed to defer to his authority. It wasn't until much later that I learned the reason behind James's demeanor. He was an Army veteran who had been injured in action years ago. His military background explained why he insisted on everything being meticulously planned and executed down to the very last detail. Despite understanding the root of his behavior, it didn't make it any easier when he would get angry and raise his voice, especially over seemingly trivial things like being a minute late for church on Sundays. His strictness sometimes made me feel on edge, walking on eggshells to avoid his anger. Lorraine, on the other hand, was a bit more chill, and she liked to drink when James was not around. I have seen her finish an entire bottle of wine just by herself. She always seemed really sad and lost in her thoughts. She would seldom ask me about my school or about my homework. The only thing she did the whole day besides drinking was cook food and clean the house because James was quite strict about it. In the beginning, we all got along, and I didn't see a lot of fights between them. However, as time went on and I grew up, I started realizing that James was actually abusive. For James, nothing mattered to him more than my grades. He would constantly tell me how I needed to step up my game if anyone scored more than me. He would also sometimes get angry and slap me if I got even 1 mark less in my exams and would call me stupid. He would threaten that he would drive me back to the orphanage if I didn't score good marks. As a child, I didn't know that this wasn't actually possible, so it would terrify me every time he brought it up. I would constantly work hard to please him just to ensure that he would not give me back. I would also notice that Lorraine and James would have arguments, after which James would drag her into their bedroom. She would have punch marks all over her hands and face. In the beginning, I did not understand why, but then I realized that he was physically assaulting her. He didn't want me to see him beating her up in case I ever spilled the truth in front of others. Hence, he would drag Lorraine inside the bedroom. I just didn't understand why Lorraine never called the police on him. After their fights, all she ever did was sit and cry silently for hours on end while James would drink beer and watch TV. After realizing that he was abusive, I was afraid to be alone around James or do anything to piss him off. But as anyone who has grown up in an abusive family knows, abusers will find any excuse to unleash their anger on you. It didn't matter how careful I was or how much I tried to avoid upsetting him, he always found reason to lash out. In the beginning, it was always my grades, but as I started growing up, his target shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just about my academic performance, it became about trivial things like the clothes I wore, the friends I hung out with, and if any guy was interested in me. He would constantly tell me how I needed to come back home straight from school, as hanging out with friends would only distract me. According to him, my friends would amount to nothing, so I needed to keep my head down and study. Unbeknownst to James, Lorraine quietly allowed me to spend an hour with my friends after school. She understood that James wouldn't be home until later in the evening, so she saw it as a small opportunity for me to have some semblance of normality and social interaction outside of our tense home environment. It was a brief respite from the constant pressure and scrutiny that I faced at home, and I cherished those moments with my friends even if they were fleeting. This subtle act of kindness from Lorraine meant a lot to me. However, things worsened dramatically when James lost his job. The loss of his job seemed to intensify his frustration and anger, exacerbating the abusive atmosphere in our home. With the added stress of financial instability, James became even more unpredictable and volatile, lashing out at the slightest provocation. One night, I remember Lorraine had just finished preparing dinner, and as James sat down at the table, he took one look at the meal and exploded into a tirade about how it wasn't up to his standards. He started yelling and slamming the table, telling her how she wasn't good enough and if she could not cook properly, he would not hesitate to kick her out to the street. He threw his plate on the wall while Lorraine and I sat terrified, just watching him. I could feel my whole body shaking. Later, when I ate the food, I didn't find anything wrong with Lorraine's cooking. As time went on, James's drinking got worse and worse. Since he was unemployed and had nothing to do but laze around the whole day, I would wake up in the morning and see beer cans everywhere in the living room, which Lorraine would have to clean up. I was also not able to hang out with any of my friends during this time, since James would ask me if I was even a minute late coming back home after school. When I turned 15, one of my classmates, Harry, confessed his feelings for me and asked me out on a date. I was nervous about James finding out, but being a teenager, I wanted to experience what it was like to go on a date and explore my feelings. So, despite my apprehension, I agreed to go out with Harry. We met up at a local coffee shop after school, and we spent the afternoon chatting and getting to know each other. Going on that date was the best decision in my life because that is how Harry and I fell in love with each other. He was everything that James was not. He was gentle and kind to everyone, including animals. He would bring me my favorite flowers whenever he could after saving up his pocket money. I did not have a good male role model, so I never really expected anything from Harry. However, he treated me just right. James was always a bit suspicious and would ask me if I was hanging out with any guys. I would refuse while secretly praying that he would not find out the truth. Luckily, I was not allowed to have a phone, so there were no incriminating messages for him to read and find out. Harry and I were always careful about our dates, and we didn't even tell our friends that we were dating so that the news would not spread. Harry understood how scared I was of James, and he didn't mind keeping our relationship a secret. When prom came around, Harry and I both agreed that we would attend the dance together with our friend group to avoid any suspicions. However, when James found out that I wanted to attend prom, he refused to let me go. He told me how it was just a waste of time and refused to buy me a dress. Honestly, I did not care about a new dress since I just wanted to have a good time with my friends. I pleaded with him to let me go since I had always scored good marks just like he wanted, but he scolded me, saying these friendships were going to mean nothing and that going to the prom wasn't even a big deal. He and Lorraine had an argument over it since she didn't see any reason why I should stay at home when all my classmates would be out. This is when I remembered James saying how teenagers had no sense of right and wrong and that he wasn't going to let me go just so I could fool around when I could stay at home and be safe. I pleaded and pleaded with James, trying to reason with him and explain how important this event was to me as a teenager, but no matter what I said, he remained adamant, dismissing my desires as frivolous and insignificant. He threatened that if I sneaked out to attend prom, he would lock me out. On the night of prom, I was the only one who didn't attend, and I spent the entire night crying all alone in my room. I was growing sick and tired of living with James. After high school ended, it was difficult for me to meet with Harry as I was not allowed to go out, and I didn't have a phone either. I asked James if I could have a phone, and he told me how at my age I didn't even need one. I tried to reason with him that I would be going away to college and everyone had a phone, but he told me that if I needed a phone, then I should pay for it myself. This is when I decided to get a part-time job where I could work until I had to go away for college. The pay was crap, but it allowed me to earn some money and become a bit independent. I could also hang out with my boyfriend Harry then without James finding out, since I would just make up excuses that I was at work while I was meeting him. Eventually, I received news that I had gotten into an Ivy League university with a full-ride scholarship. This was a big deal since no one from my town had gotten in, and James took it upon himself to tell everyone how proud he was of me, boasting about my achievement to anyone who would listen. He never once congratulated me properly, but he sure did brag about it in front of others as if it was his achievement too. Following my college acceptance, I probably breathed the biggest sigh of relief in my entire life. James finally had nothing to complain about since I fulfilled his biggest dream by getting into a good college with the scholarship. I was also working, so he could not call me lazy anymore. He was so happy that he agreed to buy me a phone and asked me to save the money that I had been earning from my job to be used for any college expenses. He also allowed me to hang out with my friends after work. For the first time, I was allowed to have fun like any other person. Harry and I knew that we would be apart once we were away in college, although we did promise to meet each other whenever we could. We were intimate with each other once or twice, and every time both of us were very careful. Jumping ahead to about 2 weeks later, I began experiencing strange symptoms similar to those of my period but without actually getting it. Now, being a smart kid, I just knew something was off with my body. I was also craving food at random hours. I panicked and told Harry that I needed to do some pregnancy tests, and he agreed. I did 3 tests, and all of the tests showed positive results. I was so shocked that I collapsed on the floor crying. It felt like I was living one of the worst nightmares of my life. Harry tried to comfort me, but I was shaking uncontrollably. I knew James would kill me if he found out that I was pregnant, and that too just before I was about to go to college. Harry assured me that this was completely my decision and he would stand by me no matter what. He told me that he would talk to his parents, and then together we could talk to James so that he didn't get violent with me. He knew my home life, so he was quite worried for me. Harry's parents were incredibly understanding, and his mother hugged me and assured me that it happens to everyone, so I should not worry so much. They agreed to come over to my place so we could all break the news to James. When Lorraine and James found out that I was pregnant, they were completely stunned. Lorraine asked me twice if I was actually sure, and I nodded since I had taken multiple tests. On the other hand, James exploded in a fit of anger, yelling at me that this is why he never wanted to adopt kids from strangers because there was no guarantee about their character. He called me a lot of bad words which I won't repeat here and told me how I had basically ruined my life. Harry's parents tried to calm him down, but James went off on them about how this was all their son's fault, and he looked like he was about to physically assault Harry, who sat in the corner quietly. This is when I started to cry and told James that I wasn't planning on keeping the pregnancy anyway, so he had nothing to worry about. I reassured him that everything could go back to normal, and I would be off to college just like we had planned. This is when Lorraine informed us that she needed to talk to James privately. They excused themselves while I sat there crying and fidgeting nervously. Harry's parents looked at me sympathetically. Eventually, Lorraine and James returned, and Lorraine began speaking, her words hitting me like a tidal wave. She expressed her belief that we didn't necessarily have to give up the child, suggesting that I could carry the pregnancy to term and then relinquish my parental rights to them. I sat there in stunned silence as she emphasized that this child was a gift from God and urged us not to consider any other options. James chimed in, affirming Lorraine's sentiments and suggesting that this arrangement would be best, especially since Lorraine was already pregnant herself. His words left me utterly bewildered, and I couldn't comprehend what he was suggesting. James explained that they had discovered just a week ago that Lorraine was expecting, but that they had kept the news to themselves because they were still processing it. And now that I was pregnant too, they had decided that they could raise both children as siblings. The shock of the revelation left me speechless, grappling with the weight of their proposal and the unexpected turn of events. Harry's parents were shocked by this proposal too and immediately voiced their disapproval, but James cut in, saying that it was not their decision to make anyway, and looked at me expectantly, waiting for an answer. I was overcome with nerves, but deep down I knew I couldn't agree to Lorraine and James's proposal. The thought of giving up my child to be raised in an environment similar to the one I had experienced growing up with them was something I couldn't bear to entertain. While Lorraine had proven to be a caring mother in many respects, I couldn't ignore the fact that she couldn't protect herself from James's behavior, let alone guarantee the safety of my child. The idea of subjecting my unborn child to the same uncertainty and potential harm was out of the question. As much as I cherished the idea of becoming a mother one day, I knew that the timing and circumstances weren't right for me. I couldn't bring a child into the world under these conditions, knowing that I couldn't ensure their safety and well-being. I firmly told James that although I was extremely happy that I would be getting a sibling soon, I could not go through with my pregnancy as I was not mentally and physically strong enough to go through the ordeal. Also, I couldn't fathom the idea of watching my child grow up with Lorraine and James and pretend that they were simply a sibling. The thought of living a lie, denying my own child the truth of their parentage, was something I couldn't bear to face. Lorraine began to cry as she heard my decision, telling me how disappointed she was that I could not do this for her when she had sacrificed so much for me. James looked pissed and got up from his seat to pace around the room. I tried to explain to them, but they refused to understand. Harry's mother chimed in, saying she agreed with my decision and that she could make an appointment for me with the gynecologist so we could proceed with the next course of action. This just made Lorraine cry even harder, and James began to yell if I was happy now that I was hurting her so much. He then told me that I needed to get my things and leave the house. My eyes widened in shock as James said that he was sick and tired of having me around the house when I was nothing but ungrateful and selfish for not giving them my child. Harry's parents gently told me to pack my things as quickly as possible since they could see how volatile James was becoming. I ran upstairs to quickly pack all my important documents and albums along with whatever clothes I could get my hands on. When I came downstairs, James warned me to take whatever I could because he would be throwing all my stuff and burning it the next day. I tried to talk to Lorraine, but she refused to even look at me. As I was walking out, James told me that I should not bother coming back ever again. I just didn't understand what I did so wrong for them to disown me so mercilessly as if I meant absolutely nothing. I went back home with Harry and his parents, who graciously offered me a place to stay. The next few days were a blur as Harry's parents took me to the gynecologist, where we made an appointment for the much-needed procedure. It was a decision that weighed heavily on both me and Harry, but under the circumstances, we knew it was the best choice for our futures. After the procedure, I spent the next few days just recovering while Harry didn't leave my side for a minute. He and his parents were extremely kind and took care of me the best that they could. Throughout all this, James and Lorraine never once contacted me. When the day finally came that I was going to move into my college, I texted James about it, hoping that he would have forgiven me by now. However, he replied back saying how much of a failure and disappointment I was and how I had turned into a prostitute, hence, he wanted nothing to do with me. He wrote that he didn't want his biological child to turn out like me. His words hurt so deeply that I cried for hours. They were the only parents I knew, and now they had conveniently cut me off when they were about to have their own children. My college years were tough but rewarding. I had to work part-time to pay for my expenses while also studying hard to maintain my grades. It was a struggle, but I was determined to succeed. Thankfully, Harry stuck by me through it all, just like he had promised. He would come and visit me at college whenever he could. Honestly, his unwavering support kept me going even when things got tough. During holidays, his parents would often invite me to come down to spend time with them. They started to feel more like family. I graduated from college with honors, earning the distinction of cum laude. Harry and his parents were there to cheer for me during my graduation ceremony. I landed a nice cushy job in my field. It was a proud moment for me, knowing I'd worked hard to get there. Eventually, Harry and I moved in together, and as time went on, our relationship only grew stronger. We supported each other through the ups and downs of life. After several years of being together, we decided to take the next step and tie the knot. Our wedding day was a beautiful celebration of our love and commitment to each other, surrounded by our closest friends and family. The thought of inviting James and Lorraine to my wedding didn't even cross my mind. As a married couple, Harry and I have continued to build our life together for years. Recently, we took the big leap and bought another house for ourselves while we rented out our previous home. We've turned this new place into our cozy sanctuary where we can create new memories and plan for the future. The reason we bought this second place was to be closer to Harry's parents as they are getting old. They have become sort of my parents too, so I want to take care of them in any way that I can. It's been almost 20 years now since I was kicked out by James and Lorraine, and I don't even remember them much anymore. Throughout all these years, I have not really bothered to think about them. Although I do remember that I spent my first year of college crying and missing them a lot, but by the second year, I knew that this was my chance to build a new life for myself, one free from their rejection. Hence, I made myself stop thinking about them altogether. It did hurt a lot, and it took a lot of strength for me to build this life all on my own. They have never bothered calling me in all these years, and honestly, I have never bothered checking in with them also. Throughout this time, Harry has been my rock, my partner in every sense of the word. We never had any children, but we do have 2 dogs that we absolutely love. We visit Harry's parents every other weekend. We regularly go on trips and enjoy exploring new restaurants together. Overall, I can say that my life has turned out well, and I wish I could hug my 17-year-old self now for worrying so much about her future. Recently, I got a friend request on Facebook from an unknown person called Matt who had a very familiar surname. When I opened his profile, I almost jolted in surprise when I realized that he looked eerily similar to James. I accepted his request, and he sent me a message saying hello, so I replied back. He then told me that this might be a weird question, but he wanted to know if I knew someone named James and Lorraine. I almost caught my breath as now I was sure that it was indeed him. He was their son. I was a bit nervous to reply, but I also wanted to be truthful, so I told him that I indeed knew them since they had adopted me when I was 5 years old. Matt then excitedly replied back that he wanted to talk to me if I was comfortable, so I agreed. I gave him my number, and he gave me a call. It was so awkward at first because I did not know what to say, but Matt started off excitedly about how he always knew that his parents had a child before him since he had seen pictures in the family photos, but whenever he would ask them about it, they would refuse to give him an explanation. He told me that he had been searching for me for a very long time as he had found out my name from the people back in our hometown, and as luck would have it, he had accidentally stumbled onto my profile recently. He said that he had no reason to contact me except just to know the truth. Matt's earnest request for the truth left me feeling conflicted, but ultimately I knew I had to be honest with him. With a heavy heart, I began to recount the painful events of my past, including how his parents had asked me to give up my child for them and subsequently kicked me out when I didn't comply. I held nothing back as I revealed how they had been absent from my life for all these years, and the only reason I had managed to survive was because of the kindness and support of my husband and his parents. It was a difficult conversation filled with raw emotion and painful memories which I had long since kept hidden inside me. As I spoke, I could sense the shock and disbelief in Matt's voice, but he listened attentively, absorbing every word. When I finished, there was a heavy silence from his side. After taking a moment to comprehend what I had just said, Matt told me how he had no idea that his parents had treated me so unbelievably cruelly and that he had always assumed I had run away of my own will, as that is what they had apparently told everyone back in our hometown. He told me that he never imagined his parents could do such a thing and thanked me for my honesty. With a tone of sincerity, he apologized to me on behalf of his parents, expressing regret for the pain that they had caused me. After our conversation, I've been feeling grateful that Matt made the effort over the years to reach out to me. His understanding and support have brought me a sense of comfort and validation. However, I can't shake the worry about how James and Lorraine will react once they find out that I've shared the truth with Matt. Ida for telling him the truth, or should I not have interfered and kept my mouth shut? I just wanted to update you that I was in fact right to worry, because in just a matter of 24 hours, I have received multiple calls and texts from Lorraine and James. I have never really changed my number in all these years, so I guess it was easy for them to find me. They have sent me multiple messages calling me various names, but mostly their anger stems from why I shared our family's secrets with Matt and accused me of betraying their trust. James wrote in a message that I should have just kept my mouth shut as I had for all these years and not tried to come in between him and his son. Feeling overwhelmed and unsure of how to respond, I've been avoiding their calls and messages, unsure of how to navigate this unexpected confrontation. I told my husband about all this. He had no idea about Matt reaching out to me. However, when he found out that I had spilled the beans, he thought that I should not have done that. He clarified that it was not because telling the truth was wrong, but because he thought James was clearly unhinged and now this would just add unnecessary drama into our lives. I did talk to Matt about everything, and he informed me that after our conversation, he confronted James and Lorraine, who tried to deny everything. They told him that I was nothing but a liar and a selfish person who used them until I could get away to college. However, Matt didn't believe them and asked them to stay away from his kids. He also informed them that he would be cutting them off and would no longer be helping them out financially. Matt then went on to tell me how he and his wife had recently adopted twins, but James and Lorraine were not exactly thrilled about it and had refused to even come and visit his children. It had made him question their behavior, but they had brushed his concerns off. However, after reaching out to me and finding out the real story of my past, he realized exactly why they were not so happy with him adopting his kids. He told me that he had no idea that James and Lorraine would lash out at me, and he assured me that he would ask them to back off. He even invited me to visit his twins whenever I could find time, telling me that regardless of how his parents treated me, he would always love to get to know me better since I was his sibling anyway. After my conversation with Matt, I do feel much better. Honestly, I'm really surprised by how sweet he is and how different he is compared to James and Lorraine. I might actually take up his invitation and visit his children one of these days with my husband. I took the step to block James and Lorraine from all communication channels, so I haven't received any threatening messages from them. Additionally, Matt did intervene and spoke to them, so I'm sure they had no choice but to back off. In the past few months, Harry and I have visited Matt and his wife at least 4 times, and they have been incredibly welcoming each time. We've spent hours catching up, sharing stories, and bonding over our childhood experiences. During these visits, I've had the opportunity to spend time with Matt's twins as well, who are absolute bundles of joy. I'm genuinely grateful now that Matt reached out to me, and I am happy for the newfound connection with him and his family as it has helped me heal from the wounds of the past.